President Zelensky has to get all of his everything he needs, because he's going to have to get ready to sign something, and I think he is working hard to get that done. Well, you're looking at territory that's been fought over for 3.5 years with, a lot of Russians have died, a lot of Ukrainians have died. So we're looking at that, but we're actually looking to get some back and some swapping. It's complicated. It's actually nothing easy. It's very complicated, but we're going to get some back. We're going to get some switched. There'll be some swapping of territories to the betterment of both. And but we'll be talking about that either later or tomorrow or whatever.
This is my video update on this Saturday afternoon, August the 9th, coming to you from Limassol, Cyprus. Let's talk about some news. And before we get to the big news topic for today, I have an announcement to make. This will be my final video. That's right. I am calling it quits. I'm actually retiring after today's video, and I'm just going to be straight up with everybody that is watching this program. I'm retiring because I listened to Pam Bondi's video from yesterday, where she said that the Department of Justice and the U.S. government will be giving a $50 million reward to anyone that can help find Nicolas Maduro. And I know where he is. I know where he is, and I will tell you where he is, because this video will be posted a couple of hours after my recording. So if you think that you'll be able to take the information that I give you and then call Pam Bondi and claim that $50 million reward, I've already beaten you to it. Nicolas Maduro is in Caracas, Venezuela, and that is what I am going to tell Pam Bondi after I'm done recording this video. I will notify her of the whereabouts of the Venezuelan leader, and then I will be collecting my $50 million reward. And I am here at the Trilogy Tower in Limassol, Cyprus. I've already reserved the very, very top floor, the penthouse. I've already reserved it. All I'm waiting for is the $50 million to come into my my bank account, and that's it. I'm done, everybody. I'm retired. I'm out of the news video update business, and I'm just going to relax with my my $50 million reward. So, saying that, let's get to the big news for the day, and it's Alaska. That's right. That is where the meeting between Trump and Putin will take place on August the 15th. Trump announced this on Truth Social. The highly anticipated meeting between myself as President of the United States of America and President Vladimir Putin of Russia will take place next Friday, August the 15th, 2025, in the great state of Alaska. Further details to follow. Thank you for your attention to this matter. So I didn't have Alaska on my bingo card. I don't think anyone did. But it makes sense, actually. It does make sense. I said yesterday in my video update that Russia should not agree to any country in the collective West or in NATO hosting the meeting between Putin and Trump. But saying that, if you are going to choose a location in the collective West, it would be Alaska, USA. It does make sense. There's a history with Alaska between the United States and Russia. There's very little distance between Russia and Alaska. I believe we're talking about 120 kilometers, I want to say. So it's a very short trip for the Russian president if he's in the Far East. It's a safe trip for the Russian president. And if there's no fear of some sort of a trap or sabotage when he's in the United States, which I highly, highly doubt, the U.S. would have to be absolutely freaking crazy to try something against Russian President Vladimir Putin. That would be World War III. I don't think there's any danger to Putin, the man in Alaska, in the United States, traveling to the United States. It just makes sense then. If Putin's going to be safe, if you have to choose one country in the collective West, a country that's not in the ICC, so there's no fear of the Rome Statute or anything like that, because the U.S. is not a signatory. And you look at distance, you look at the historical connection. Alaska, yeah, it makes sense, right? I would have preferred, the Middle East or something like that, or Asia. But who am I? Who am I to say what I preferred, right? What I would prefer, right? It does make sense. And you know what? One thing with Russia that we've come to understand as they've been going through this negotiation process is that they like consistency. That's why they've had meetings in Istanbul, right? That's where the first meetings took place. You had the meetings in Belarus, and then you had the meetings in Istanbul in 2022. And that is why the Russians continue to insist on Istanbul going forward for any meetings with Ukraine. It's the consistency of it all. And Alexander pointed out in a video that we recorded on the Duran 2 days ago, Alexander, he kind of called this in a way. If you go back to the first phone call between Trump and Putin in February 12th, 2025, in the Russian readouts and statements from Peskov from that phone call, the United States and Russia, they did agree that Trump would visit Russia and that Putin would visit the United States. They did agree to that in February of 2025. So it does make sense. It does have a continuity to it. It does have a history to it. If you take into account, if you factor in that the United States would have to be absolutely, completely nuts and crazy to put Putin's life in danger in Alaska, that would have to be absolutely freaking nuts, then Alaska makes sense, right? So it is Alaska, August the 15th. That is where the meeting is going to take place. And according to Ushakov, there will also be a meeting in Russia. So that is what has been agreed upon. The first meeting in the United States, which will be the beginning of the process. And I would imagine the next meeting, or perhaps the end of the process, will be in Russia. From the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Russia, Russia's president aide, Yuri Ushakov, an agreement was reached to hold a meeting between Presidents Putin and Donald Trump on August 15th in Alaska. Russia and the U.S. share borders. It makes sense for the meeting to take place in Alaska. You know, the other advantage of Alaska, now that I come to think of it, is that it's very far away from Europe, from the EU. It's about as far away as you can get from the EU and from Europe, and very far away from Zelensky and Podolyak. Podolyak. How are we going to get to Alaska? I don't know, Mr. President. It's pretty far away. Yeah, no crashing the party from Zelensky, no crashing the party from the Europeans. Very, very far away. An ideal location for Trump and for Putin to sit down and get to work without any distractions, without any interference from the UK, from the EU, from Ukraine. A true bilateral meeting, and this has got to be freaking out the collective West. Without the United States, the collective West, without the United States, Europe, UK, Ursula, Kaya, Ukraine, Zelensky, Yermak. This has got to be freaking them out. Freaking them out in a big, big way. Zelensky has already come out with a statement saying that he's not going to agree to any of this, right? So Trump yesterday, as he was taking part in the Armenia-Azerbaijan deal, and I'll get to that later in the video, he was asked questions about Ukraine and meeting with Russia, and Trump said that there's going to be some territory swapping going on, right? He didn't get into any of the details. I'll talk about that in a minute as well. But upon hearing this news, Zelensky came out with a statement saying no. Ukraine is not going to swap any territory. He said it's in our constitution. We are not going to be trading any territory, swapping any territory, giving up any territory. From the BBC, Ukraine will not give up land, Zelensky says, as Trump plans to meet Putin. So Zelensky is already in a big time panic. But yeah, Trump told the media there's going to be some territory that is swapped. We don't have any details. Trump also said that Zelensky should be preparing to sign some things, right? He said that Zelensky should probably be preparing to sign some things. He's not going to like it. He's not going to like it, but he's going to have to sign some things. I don't like it. He's not going to like it, but he's going to have to sign something. Yeah. The question now is, are we looking at Istanbul Plus, root causes, June 2024, root causes, or are we looking at Minsk 3? Maybe we will find out on August 15th. Maybe not. Maybe we'll find out the details of what is agreed on by the United States and Russia in the second meeting that will most likely take place in Russia. Is it going to be Istanbul Plus, or are we looking at Minsk 3, or are we looking at neither? Will there be some sort of a sabotage? And will this derail the peace efforts, the peace deal? Will Trump be influenced by outside forces and change his mind, flip-flop back to the position of escalation? The Wall Street Journal, they put out an article with the title, Putin tells U.S. he'll halt war in exchange for eastern Ukraine. The proposal prompted the Trump administration to begin preparing for a summit with the Russian leader, but European officials expressed skepticism over its viability. A lot of pushback already from Europe. A lot of pushback from Europe, from the EU and the UK. They are not going to like this at all. They bet everything on keeping the war going. They bet their entire economy, the EU, the UK, bet their entire economy on keeping the war going. They're not going to like this at all. And the Wall Street Journal is saying that Europe is already pushing back. And the Wall Street Journal article along with a Bloomberg article, but I'm not going to discuss the Bloomberg article because I've been burned so many times by talking about Bloomberg's reporting. It has been horrific during this entire conflict. Everything that Bloomberg has put out has turned out to be completely off. But the Wall Street Journal, in this article, they claim that when Witkoff was in Moscow, Putin put out the terms of a deal, the contours, the framework of a deal, and this was okay for Witkoff and for the Trump administration. Let me read you what the Wall Street Journal is saying. Putin told Witkoff he would agree to a complete ceasefire if Ukraine agreed to withdraw forces from all of Ukraine's eastern Donetsk region. According to officials briefed on the call, Russia would then control the Donetsk and Lugansk regions, as well as the Crimea Peninsula, which it seized in 2014 and once recognized as sovereign Russian territory. In a series of calls this week, Europeans sought to get clarity on a key aspect of the proposal. What would happen in the southern regions of Zaporozhye and Kherson, where Russian troops also control some territory? Officials who were briefed by the Trump administration on calls Wednesday and Thursday came away with conflicting impressions about whether Putin intended to freeze the current front lines or eventually pull out of those regions entirely. A U.S. official said Putin called for pausing the war at current front lines in both regions. Russia would then negotiate land swaps with Ukraine, aiming for full Moscow control of Zaporozhye and Kherson. It couldn't be determined which territory Ukraine would receive in return. Well, I can answer that question. The north, Sumy and Kharkov and the areas around Kharkov. That's what it would receive in return. So basically what the Wall Street Journal is saying, and this sounds fairly accurate. I can see Putin saying this to Witkoff, because what we're talking about is Putin telling Witkoff, look, man, Istanbul Plus. I've been telling you guys for about a year and a half now, a year and a couple of months now, that Istanbul Plus is still on the table. Last week, Putin said Istanbul Plus is still on the table. He said that last week. I talked about it in a video update. So I can see Putin telling Witkoff, Istanbul Plus still holds, but not for much longer, because the entire front line in Donbass and Kherson actually is about to collapse, and it's all going to collapse very quickly. So Putin tells Witkoff this, and Witkoff goes back to Trump and says, Istanbul Plus is still there. The Ukraine military is going to collapse. The Zelensky regime, our puppet Zelensky, his entire government's a complete mess. The Ukraine military is a mess. All of our wonder weapons have failed. Russia's winning the war. Our sanctions failed. Our 100% tariff Armageddon, that failed. It did not cause chaos in BRICS. It actually unified BRICS. BRICS is standing together. They're standing firm. They're standing strong. No one's ditching Russia. China's not ditching Russia. India's not ditching Russia. Brazil's not ditching Russia. Everything we've tried has failed, Mr. President. You now own this war. Istanbul Plus is on the table. What do you say? Take the deal? That's what I think went down. And that's what the Wall Street Journal is saying here. It looks like Putin said Istanbul Plus, Zaporozhye, Kherson, Lugansk, Donetsk, Crimea, of course, which is something that was in the Russian memorandum. Remember the memorandums that were exchanged a couple of weeks ago? That was basically what the memorandum said. Russia presented Trump with two options, and one of the options was that the Ukraine military leaves all of these 5 regions, and then we can talk about a full ceasefire. And it looks like that's where we're heading. The Europeans are questioning what exactly is going on with the regions. Are we looking at just Lugansk and Donetsk? This is what the Europeans are asking. Or are we talking about Donetsk, Lugansk, Zaporozhye, and Kherson? Or are we talking about a freeze on the current front lines in Zaporozhye and Kherson? So Russia retains parts of these two regions, and Ukraine retains the other parts. Going off of the Wall Street Journal article, it looks like Putin told Witkoff we're talking about all of the regions in their entirety, according to the Russian constitution, right? The Russian constitution considers these regions as part of Russia, all of them, the entirety of these regions. If there is a freeze on the current front line, a freeze on Zaporozhye and Kherson on the current front lines, and the Ukraine military stays put where they are in Zaporozhye and Kherson, and the Russians stay put where they are, then we're looking at a Minsk 3. We're not looking at an Istanbul Plus, because Istanbul Plus says the entirety of the regions. If the deal, the swapping of territories, is not the north, is not Sumy and whatever territory Russia controls in Kharkov, in the Kharkov region, and the swapping of territories is all of Donetsk, all of Lugansk in exchange for all of Zaporozhye and all of Kherson, then this is a big L for Russia. Then we're not talking about Istanbul Plus, we're talking about Minsk 3, and we're talking about a freeze. So that's where we are. That's how I see it. If we're talking about Istanbul Plus, then it's all of the regions in their entirety, and the Ukraine military has to leave. Anything else, a freeze on the current front lines or a swapping of territory, which involves Kherson, Zaporozhye for Donetsk and Lugansk, then that's a loss. That is a loss for Russia, and we're talking about Minsk 3. So that's the situation we're in. But once again, the way I read the article from the Wall Street Journal, we're looking at the regions in their entirety, and the Europeans don't like it. They don't like it, and Zelensky doesn't like it, and he is pushing back and saying, no freaking way are we agreeing to this. In which case, if Trump agrees to this, in principle, if he agrees to Istanbul Plus, and the Europeans, the UK, and Zelensky do not agree to this, and they say no way, then Trump can walk away from this. If he's smart, that is what he can do. He can say, you know what, the US is fine with this agreement. In principle, this is in our best interests. We're out of Project Ukraine, and if Europe and Ukraine, if they don't want to go along with this agreement that I've made with the Russian president, with Russia, then they're on their own, and they can handle Project Ukraine in full. That would mean money and weapons and everything. So that's the way out for Trump. Either you get a big deal and everyone is on board, including Zelensky, including Ukraine and the Europeans. They move away from the music. Or the United States can walk away. And Trump can say, we did everything. We tried everything and we did everything. So what else do I want to say? So I think that's it. There hasn't been any discussion so far. All the articles and all the discussion has been about territory in Istanbul Plus. You're also talking about no NATO. You have to make that rock solid. No NATO forever for Ukraine. Completely neutral. If I was Russia, I would also say no EU, because the EU is NATO, and Russia has been hinting at the fact, actually they've been saying it pretty openly, that because the EU is now NATO and NATO is now the EU, no EU for Ukraine either. No talk about elections. They haven't really mentioned elections in Ukraine, which is another term, another condition that Russia has. Sanctions, the lifting of sanctions, no talk about that, though I imagine that that's going to be in there because Dmitriev is very involved in this process and he's very keen on doing business with the United States, for Russia to do business with the United States. And I imagine the United States is interested in doing business with Russia. So I imagine sanctions would be in there. I imagine the Russian frozen assets would be part of the deal. And the weapons deliveries, part of Istanbul Plus and part of the memorandum that Russia presented to the United States a couple of weeks ago, also said no more weapons deliveries to Ukraine from any country. That includes Europe, that includes the United States, NATO, no weapons deliveries. So that stuff hasn't been mentioned, but that's going to be stuff that, without a doubt, is going to be discussed at these meetings. And of course, the overall general security architecture of Europe. That's going to be a big discussion as well. That may be the most important discussion. The United States and Russia, they have to come to an agreement to the security architecture of Europe, which not only takes the US and Europe's interests into consideration, but absolutely takes Russia's interests into consideration. So that's going to be a very big topic. And these are all things that Putin wants to discuss, and I believe he will discuss with Trump. And given the fact that the United States, they have no more cards to play, I would guess that they're going to agree to many of the points, if not all of the points that Russia brings up. So I have covered everything that I can think of with the Trump-Putin talks. The news is that Pokrovsk is going to fall very fast. The Russian military, they're already dividing Pokrovsk, the city, into different sections and sectors that they're going to now capture. So that's already being done. And the word is that Pokrovsk could fall within the next week or within the next month, which is very, very fast, much faster than anyone had anticipated. And the same holds true for Seversk and Kupiansk. And Politico is reporting that Kherson is being evacuated by Ukraine. Ukraine is evacuating Kherson and Kherson city. And that's going to come into play as well. And the entire front line is being set up for Russia to capture all of these very important cities and towns and nodes in Ukraine's defense line. And builds Julian Ropke, he actually put out a post on X, and this guy's super pro Ukraine, super pro Zelensky. His post basically admits that, you know what, the Russians strategized this perfectly. Perfect strategy from the Russian military. They set up a scenario where they have all of these very, very strategic locations and towns. They have them either surrounded or surrounded on three sides. And all of these areas are now under Russian threat. And with one final push, the Russian military can capture all of these areas across the entire front line and then get to the Dnieper, and it's game over. And Julian Ropke said that the Russian military played this perfectly. This is not by chance that all of these settlements, all of these towns, all these regions are now under threat from a Russian capture. This was deliberate. The Russian military knew what they were doing. The attrition warfare paid off. Destroying all of the NATO weapons paid off. And now the Russian military is in a position where at any moment they can collapse the entire front line and it's game over for the Ukraine military. Russia is going to be reaching the Dnieper. So what option did Trump have? The more I think about it, the more I've come to the belief that the main driving force in Trump accepting this deal is that the front line was going to collapse in a big way. But the Baltsovo times 10 moment. The White House Pentagon advisors probably told Trump, forget about what you're hearing from the Ukraine Ministry of Defense. Forget about what you're hearing from the UK Ministry of Defense. Forget about New York Times, CNN, all of their reporting. We're telling you right now that at any moment, the Russian military can completely capture all of Donbass. They're going to reach the Dnieper, and it's game over. A Debaltsevo moment. And so I think this was the deciding factor for the Trump White House to say, you know what? We have no choice. It's game over. At least for the United States, let's make a deal. And if Ukraine agrees to it, we have a deal. If they don't, we have our off-ramp. So that's the situation. And I think the second factor is that the tariff Armageddon did not work. The plan was to collapse BRICS, isolate Russia, isolate China, isolate India, damage Putin's oil funding, or so they believed, damage Putin's war machine and oil funding. It was a terrible plan, a dumb plan, but that's what they believed they would be able to do, and that failed as well. So I think those two things have pushed Trump to say, okay, we're out. Or at least that's how it looks. Maybe all of this is a trap, though. You never know. If you go off of Iran and everything that happened with Iran, this could all be a trap as well. And with the Trump White House, they could flip-flop back to escalation. I have to say that. I don't know how all of this is going to play out. I have no idea how all of this is going to play out. But it does look like we started on February 12th, 2025, with a Trump administration that said, you know what, let's negotiate some sort of a deal. Let's go off of Istanbul Plus. Witkoff said the same thing after meeting with Putin. We're going to use Istanbul Plus as a foundation. He said it. We're going to use the Istanbul talks as a foundation. It looks like we had to go through 6 months of Trump listening to Kellogg and listening to the neocons and listening to Macron and Stammer and all of these bozos. And Trump listened to all of them. And he bought into the fallacy that he would be able to deliver some sort of a defeat to Russia, or at least get some sort of a conflict freeze. And they tried freaking everything. They tried more wonder weapons. They tried more sanctions. They tried more money. They tried tariffs. They tried to go after BRICS. None of it worked. Trump was frustrated and angry and constantly saying how he's frustrated with Putin and he's angry with Putin, and Melania's angry with Putin and Melania's frustrated with Putin, and I don't like it. But nothing worked. Nothing worked, and Putin was measured and calm and patient. And Russia played the long game, and they said, let the United States, let the Trump administration go through all of their options and scenarios to try and defeat us. Nothing will work. And that's exactly what happened. And eventually, it looks like the Kremlin understood that Trump will have to come right back to February 12th, 2025, to that first phone call and say, okay, we said meetings in each other's countries. Yes, that's what we said. Great. Let's do it. So that's what I want to say. That's the news, everybody. let's talk quickly about Orban, who is now saying that the EU should have a summit with Russia. Orban calls for Russia-EU summit. The Hungarian prime minister says the bloc's leading nations must take an active role in peacemaking or risk losing relevance. I would love to see that. I think that would give me so much clown world material, seeing Ursula and Kaya Kallas sitting next to Putin and Lavrov. I mean, my God, there's no decisions that they can make. The decisions are being made by Russia and the United States. They're making the decisions, but just for material, right? Just for clown world material, it would be interesting to see Ursula and Kaya Kallas having to bend the knee to Putin and to Lavrov and to Russia, because that's what would happen, right? We saw what Trump did to Ursula. Can you imagine going to Russia and having to capitulate? Though Putin would be very, very polite, as he usually always is. Anyway, or having Merz and Macron go to Russia. Oh man, I don't think Putin would be polite to Merz. I don't think he would be polite to him at all. Remember when he made Erdogan wait for 3-4 hours, and he had the sculpture, I believe the sculpture of Catherine the Great, in reference to Turkey losing wars to Russia. I could see Putin doing that to Merz in some way, or to Ursula or Kaya Kallas. I could definitely see something like that happening if there is an EU Russia summit. There doesn't need to be. There doesn't need to be. Whatever the U.S. decides, I believe that's what the vassals will eventually have to go with. Even though they're kicking and screaming and whining and complaining, eventually they're going to have to agree. Otherwise, there's no way they can keep Project Ukraine afloat. And then you're looking at a complete collapse in Ukraine. So yesterday, Trump got the deal done with Armenia and Azerbaijan. I talked about this in my video update yesterday. Exactly as I reported yesterday, that's pretty much how it went down. A big win for the United States. The U.S. gets the Zangezur corridor, which now becomes the Trump route for international peace and prosperity, the TRIPP. So Trump actually gets this corridor named after him. The U.S. is there for 99 years. Armenia is leasing this to the United States, but in reality, Pashinyan is giving this away to the United States, which effectively means that he's giving it away to Azerbaijan and Turkey indirectly. This is going to be going to Azerbaijan and Turkey. Erdogan gets his land corridor. A huge L for Armenia. Armenia just still can't explain it. I don't understand, after seeing everything that's happening in Ukraine, why Pashinyan is insistent on NATO and the EU, and he's willing to give up so much of Armenia in order to gain favor or entrance into the European Union or NATO. It's bonkers, but there you have it. I fear for the future of Armenia. An L for Russia, because the United States, they're getting a place in the Caucasus. They're now in the Caucasus region. They've got the corridor. They're the ones that got the deal between Azerbaijan and Armenia. A huge L for Iran, because now Iran has the United States right on its border. A win for Erdogan, a massive win for Erdogan. Aliyev's a puppet of Erdogan, so whatever.
President Trump deserved to have a Nobel Peace Prize.
Armenia-Azerbaijan is definitely in the camp, at least for now, in the camp of the West, and the U.S. is there, and you're not going to get rid of the U.S., and you're not going to get rid of Turkey either. They're now in the Caucasus. They now got their hands on Armenian territory. They're not going to leave. Anyway, let's do a clown world and we can wrap this video up. And today's clown world is going back to Bondi, Pam Bondi, and the $50 million reward for Maduro. There are some reports, I can't confirm this, which claim that Venezuela has responded to the Trump White House Bondi's $50 million bounty for Maduro by saying that they will give $50 million to anyone who can get their hands on the unreleased Epstein files. Once again, I can't confirm this, but that's what some publications are reporting, which is an appropriate response from Maduro, I guess. A clever and an appropriate response from Venezuela. But to be more serious about what is going on, Venezuela and Maduro, they need to listen to what's happening from the Trump White House with detail, care, and caution. Because the Trump White House, they are coming after Maduro. They have not given up on removing Maduro, on their Juan Guaido initiative that they launched in his first term. The Trump White House is resurrecting all of that in a different format, in a different flavor. But they're going to make a big push to remove Maduro and to capture Venezuela and get all of Venezuela's oil. That's what this is ultimately all about. And the New York Times actually ran an article, a report yesterday with the title, Trump Directs Military to Target Foreign Drug Cartels. That includes, if you listen to what Pam Bondi said in her video statement, that will include Maduro and his government. And the Trump White House, according to the New York Times, is now directing the military, the US military, to get involved to remove drug cartels. And Venezuela is now in the crosshairs of the Trump administration, and there's going to be a big push to remove Maduro and to capture Venezuela and get to Venezuela's oil. So this is serious stuff now that's going to be taking place in Venezuela. And I imagine if Trump is able to free up resources from Project Ukraine, which is what he's going to do, whether he gets a deal that Zelensky agrees to, or whether he can walk away from Project Ukraine and just let Zelensky and the Europeans try to deal with it, he's going to free up resources to go after targets like Venezuela. That's my video, everybody. They're Duran.locals.com. We are on Rumble, Odyssey, BitChute, Telegram, Rockfit, and X. Go to the Duran shop, pick up some merch, like what I was wearing in this video update. There is a link in the description box down below. Take care.